Adaize was rushing home after a long day at work, her mind filled with the constant chatter of her office meetings. As she walked along the familiar street near her home, she noticed the cool evening air brushing her face, and she adjusted the strap of her handbag. Her thoughts were distracted by the usual mix of tasks awaiting her: cooking, tending to the kids, and of course, the ever growing list of things to do around the house. It was an ordinary evening, or so she thought. Turning the corner, Adaez spotted Tunde, her husband, standing on the pavement. She paused for a moment, puzzled. What was he doing out here at this time of the evening? But then her confusion deepened as she noticed the woman beside him. She was tall, slender, and clad in an elegant flowing dress that seemed far too flashy for someone on a casual street corner. And then the unthinkable happened. Tunde leaned in, pulling the woman closer. Adese's heart skipped a beat as their lips met in a passionate kiss, their bodies entwined as if the world around them didn't exist. For a moment, Adese stood frozen, unable to process what her eyes were seeing. Her chest tightened and her mind raced. Was she dreaming? Was this some sick joke? Tunde, the man she had spent the last 5 years of her life with, was kissing another woman in public on the very street where she walked every day. Adese's vision blurred, a wave of betrayal crashing through her, knocking the air from her lungs. She felt a sharp pang in her chest, like a weight was being placed on her heart. She wanted to scream, but her body wouldn't move. Time seemed to slow as she stood there, helpless, watching her world shatter into pieces. Without thinking, she took a step forward, her legs shaky as she attempted to get closer to confront them. But as she stepped off the curb, her foot caught on the edge of the pavement. In an instant, she lost her balance and tumbled forward, crashing into them. The sound of Adese's body hitting the ground was loud, echoing through the quiet street. The kiss broke abruptly, and both Tunde and the woman looked down in shock. Adese lay there, stunned and disoriented, the pain in her knees barely registering compared to the crushing weight of betrayal she was feeling. Tunde's voice broke the silence. Adese, what are you doing here? Adese pushed herself up, her eyes wild with a mixture of disbelief and heart. What are you doing here? Her voice was barely a whisper, the sting of tears just beneath the surface. How long, Tunde? How long has this been going on? The woman, who had stayed silent until now, took a step back, her expression a mix of discomfort and guilt. Tunde, on the other hand, looked like a deer caught in headlights, his face pale and his usual calm demeanor replaced by one of panic. Adese is not what you think, Tunde began, his voice pleading. Adese let out a bitter laugh. Not what I think. I saw it with my own eyes, Tunde. I saw you kiss her. She looked at the woman, her eyes filled with fury. And you, what? You couldn't find someone else's husband to cling to. How does it feel to be the other woman? The woman shifted uncomfortably, clearly out of her element. You're pathetic. Adais cut her off, her voice trembling with emotion. She turned back to Tunde, her eyes burning with anger. And you, Tunde, my husband, the father of my children, who I trusted with everything. How could you? How could you do this to me? Tunde reached out, but Adaisi stepped back, putting distance between them. The words she wanted to say were stuck in her throat, but the pain in her heart was louder than anything else. She didn't need to say more. The betrayal was clear in their eyes, in the awkward silence that hung between them. Without another word, Adaisi turned and walked away, her heart heavy with grief. The evening, which had started like any other, now felt like the end of something beautiful, something broken beyond repair. Adiaizes couldn't remember how she got home. The walk from the street corner to her front door felt like it took hours, though it had been mere minutes. Every step felt as though she were carrying the weight of the world, and her mind swelled with confusion and disbelief. She had always trusted Tundo. He was the father of her children, her partner, the man she thought she would grow old with, and now he had torn their world apart with a single kiss. As she stepped inside, the familiar smell of her home hit her, but it felt foreign now, as though she no longer belonged here. She forced a smile for the children who were playing in the living room, but it was hollow, a mere shadow of the joy she used to have when they were around. Mom, you're back early, her son Chike said excitedly, rushing over to her. He was only 6 but always knew when something wasn't quite right. Adaise knelt down to hug him, trying her best to push the tears back, but her body betrayed her. The floodgates opened, and Adaise began to cry, her sobs shaking her frame. Chike looked at her, puzzled, his small hands trying to comfort her in the only way he knew how. I'm okay, Chiki. Mommy is just tired, she whispered, wiping her eyes, but her words felt like lies. How could she explain to him that her heart had been shattered? How could she tell him that the person she trusted most in the world had betrayed her? Her mind raced as she thought about everything: the dinner they'd shared, the nights spent in each other's arms, the promises made. Was it all a lie? Had it all been a facade? The ringing of her phone startled her. It was Tunde. Adaise stared at the screen for a moment before silencing the call. She couldn't speak to him right now. She wasn't sure if she ever could again. Later that night, after putting the children to bed, Adieze sat in the quiet darkness of their bedroom. She stared at the empty side of the bed, where Tunde's warmth should have been, but now it felt cold and unwelcoming. The betrayal, like a poison, lingered in the air, suffocating her every breath. She picked up her phone again and scrolled through her messages, all of them from Tunde, each one more desperate than the last. Adaeze, please listen to me, one read. It's not what you think. But how could she listen to him? How could she forgive him? The image of him kissing that woman, his hands wrapped around her, haunted her. And for the first time, Adaise realized that she had been living in a world of her own making, blind to the reality of Tunde's actions. The storm of emotions inside her, anger, sadness, disbelief, made her dizzy. She wanted to scream, to hit something, to break something, but instead, she buried her face in her pillow, hoping that sleep would erase the pain, even if just for a moment. The next morning, Adaisi woke up early, her body stiff and aching from the tension of the night before. The children were still asleep, and the house was silent except for the soft hum of the kitchen appliances. She stood in front of the mirror, staring at her reflection. Her eyes were red and puffy from crying, and she felt like a stranger in her own skin. How had her life come to this? Tunde had called her several times, but she ignored the calls. She wasn't ready to face him yet. She needed answers, but more than that, she needed space to breathe, to process everything. Finally, she couldn't avoid him any longer. She needed to confront him, to get the truth out of him, to understand why this was happening. At noon, Adaeze called Tunde. His voice was strained when he answered, as if he'd been holding his breath waiting for her to reach out. Adaeze, he said, his tone pleading. Can we talk? I'm so sorry, please. Just let me explain. Explain? Adaise's voice trembled with anger. Explain what, Tundi? That you've been seeing another woman behind my back, that you've been lying to me for who knows how long. There was a long pause on the other end of the line. Adaise, please, let's talk in person. I swear it's not what you think. I made a mistake and I'm so sorry. She closed her eyes, her grip tightening on the phone. Her whole body was screaming at her to hang up, to cut him out of her life completely. But there was still a small part of her that loved him. Despite everything, that love was still there, buried beneath the pain. Where do you want to meet? Adaise asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Let's meet at the cafe by the park. I'll be there in an hour. When she arrived at the cafe, Tunde was already waiting for her, sitting at a table by the window. He looked different, tired, regretful, and visibly uncomfortable. His usual confident demeanor was gone, replaced by someone who had been shattered by the weight of his own guilt. Adaeze sat down across from him, her hands shaking as she folded them in her lap. She didn't say anything at first, just stared at him, waiting for him to speak. Tunde took a deep breath, his eyes searching hers. Adaeze, I don't know what happened. I don't know how it got this far. It wasn't supposed to be like this. I never meant to hurt you. His words felt hollow to her, like empty promises. But you did hurt me, Tunde, she said softly. You broke me. He reached out to touch her hand, but Adaeze pulled back, shaking her head. Don't, don't touch me. Not after what you've done. I'm sorry, he repeated, his voice barely audible. I swear I never wanted to lose you. This woman, it was a mistake, Adaeze, just a stupid mistake. Adaeze looked at him, her heart heavy with conflicting emotions. How long, Tunde? How long has this been going on? Tunde's face fell. He hesitated before answering. A few months, I I got caught up in something and I thought I could handle it. But I was wrong. I never should have lied to you. I should have been honest. Adaise felt a sharp pain in her chest, like a knife twisting inside her. Months, she repeated, her voice barely a whisper. I've been living a lie for months. Tunde's eyes filled with tears. Please, Adaise, I will do anything to make it right. Please, don't leave me. But Adaise wasn't sure what was left to fix. Was there any way to repair what had been broken? Could they ever go back to the way things were? I don't know, Tunde, she said, standing up from the table. I don't know if I can forgive you for this. I don't know if I can trust you again. Without waiting for his response, Adieze turned and walked out of the cafe, leaving Tunde behind, his words echoing in the empty space. Days passed, but Adieze's mind remained clouded with uncertainty. The conversation at the cafe had done little to ease the turmoil inside her. Tunde's apology, though heartfelt, had felt like a fleeting attempt to fix something irreparably broken. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw his face, his eyes pleading for forgiveness. But forgiveness was not something she could offer so easily, not after what he had done. She spent her days in a daze, moving through life mechanically. At work, she was present but detached. At home, she smiled for the children, her heart not truly in it. She couldn't escape the thoughts that weighed heavily on her, the betrayal, the lies, and the hollow promises. Her friends noticed her distance, but her days had become skilled at hiding her pain. She told them she was fine when they asked, but deep down she wasn't sure if she would ever feel whole again. Tunde continued to call. He sent texts, begging for another chance, but Adaise's phone sat untouched. The weight of his words hanging in the air like a storm that refused to pass. She had told him she needed space, and that's what she was trying to give herself. Space to think, space to heal, space to decide what she truly wanted. But what did she want? Her mind took her back to the many years she and Tunda had spent together. The laughter, the shared dream, the family they built. There were moments of pure happiness, of deep love. Could she really throw all of that away over one mistake? Could she just walk away from the father of her children, the man who had been there for her in so many ways? But then she remembered the kiss, the way it had felt to see him embrace another woman, to watch as he gave her the same affection he had once given her. The sting of betrayal was still fresh, cutting through her like a knife. How could she ever trust him again? As the days stretched on, Adaise found herself retreating inward, lost in a whirlwind of emotions. She could feel the tension building, the pressure mounting as her heart and mind clashed. One evening, while sitting in the living room, Adaise looked at the picture frames scattered on the coffee table, photos of her family, of Tunde and her children. of happy days that now seem distant. The memory seemed so fragile, like a house built on sand. She could feel it in her chest. A decision had to be made. Daisy sat in the park, the cool evening air brushing against her skin as she watched the sun dip below the horizon. She had asked Tunde to meet her here, alone, just the two of them. No distractions, no interruption. It was time to face the reality of their situation. Tunde arrived late, his face pale and drawn, his hands fidgeting in his pockets. Adaeze had never seen him look so broken. He took a deep breath before sitting down beside her, his eyes searching hers as if looking for some sign of hope. I've been thinking a lot, Tunde, Adaeze began, her voice steady but soft. Thinking about everything, about us, about what's been happening. I'm not sure what to say to you anymore. Tunde's face tightened with anxiety. I know I messed up at Daisy. I know I have hurt you, and I'll regret it for the rest of my life. But please, I'm begging you, give me another chance. Let's fix this together. Adaiti shook her head, her heart heavy with sorrow. I don't know if I can, Tunde. I don't know if I can ever trust you again. You've broken something inside me. And no matter how much you apologize, I don't know if that will ever heal. Tunde's voice cracked as he reached out, his hand brushing against hers. I don't know what else to say, Adaze. I love you. I'll do anything to prove it, anything to make it right. Adaze looked at him, her gaze unwavering. I know you love me, but love isn't enough, Tunde. It's not just about feeling, it's about trust. And right now, I don't know if I can trust you. She paused, her heart heavy with the weight of her words. I've spent so many years trying to build a life with you, Tunde. I've given you everything, but I need to ask myself if I can continue to live in this lie. Can I live with the constant fear that you might hurt me again? Can I live with the knowledge that I was never enough for you? Tunde's eyes filled with tears as he reached for her hand again. Please, Ades, I swear I've learned from this. I'll prove it to you. I'll work every day to make things right. Just give me a chance. Ades sat in silence, her thoughts racing. She looked at Tunde, this man she had loved for so long, and she realized that love alone wasn't enough. There were too many wounds that couldn't be healed with just words. The damage had been done, and no amount of pleading could change that. I can't, Tunde, Adase finally whispered. I can't keep living like this. I need to find peace within myself, and I can't do that while holding on to something that's already broken. Tunde's face crumpled with grief, and for a moment Adaise felt the stirrings of guilt, but she knew this was the right decision. She had to let go, not just for herself, but for the future she wanted to build, one of trust, of self-respect, and of healing. I think it's time we let go, Daisy said, her voice filled with finality. I think it's time we move on. Tunde didn't speak for a long while. He simply nodded, as though he understood the weight of her decision. He stood up slowly, his shoulders had slumped in defeat. Goodbye, Adias, he said quietly, his voice barely above a whisper. I hope someday you can forgive me. Adias watched him walk away, her heart heavy but strangely light at the same time. As the last traces of sunlight faded into the horizon, she felt the finality of her decision settle deep within her. It wasn't the end of her story, she realized. It was the beginning of a new chapter. A chapter where she would find peace, rebuild her life, and perhaps, in time, find a love that was whole, that was worthy of her trust. And though the road ahead would be difficult, Adaise was ready to face it, step by step, with the strength she had found within herself. Weeks passed after that painful conversation in the park. The initial shock of Adaise's decision still lingered, but with each passing day, she felt herself inching closer to a place of inner peace. The tears no longer came as often, and the overwhelming weight of betrayal began to lift, slowly, painfully, but steadily. Adese knew that healing would not be immediate. It wouldn't be as simple as forgetting the past or ignoring the scars that Tunde's actions had left on her heart. She understood that recovery was a process, a journey that required time and self reflection. At first, she was consumed by a constant need to understand what had happened, to dissect every detail of her relationship with Tunde, trying to find where things had gone wrong. But soon she realized that this cycle of self blame and regret was only keeping her stuck in the past. It was time to stop trying to fix what was broken and start focusing on herself, on her own well being, her own growth. Adize spent more time with her children, rediscovering the joy that came from their laughter, their innocence, and their boundless love. She found comfort in their presence, knowing that they were her true source of happiness. They didn't judge her, they simply loved her, and that unconditional love was the foundation she needed to rebuild her life. Her friends too played a crucial role in her healing. They listened to her without judgment, offering support when needed, but also allowing her the space to figure things out on her own. They reminded her of her strength, of the woman she was before the pain, and they encouraged her to move forward, one step at a time. In the quiet moments when she was alone with her thoughts, Adese would reflect on the lessons learned from her relationship with Tunde. She had given so much of herself, but in the process she had lost sight of who she was. She had neglected her own needs, her own voice in the name of love and commitment. Now she understood that love should never come at the expense of self respect. Trust was the foundation of any relationship, and without it, there was nothing left to build upon. And though the pain of betrayal would always be a part of her story, it would not define her. She had the power to redefine her future. As time went on, Adais began to embrace new opportunities. She returned to her passion, things she had put on hold during the years of her marriage. She started painting again, something she had always loved but had set aside in the chaos of everyday life. She also reconnected with old friends she had lost touch with, nurturing relationships that had fallen by the wayside. One evening, while sitting in her living room, sketching in her notebook, Adachi received a message from Tunde. It had been some time since they had last spoken, and though she had moved on, part of her still held a tiny piece of lingering hope for some kind of closure. His message was simple, yet it carried the weight of his regret. I just wanted to say again how sorry I am. I'll always care about you, Adaise. I just hope you find the happiness you deserve. Adaise stared at the message for a long moment. It wasn't the apology she had been waiting for, but it was a recognition of the pain he had caused and the acceptance that they were no longer a part of each other's lives. She took a deep breath, feeling the calmness settle within her. She typed a response, her fingers moving quickly across the screen. Thank you, Tunde. I'm doing okay now. I've learned so much and I'm choosing to move forward. She hit send and put her phone down, feeling a sense of peace wash over her. For the first time in a long while, Adais felt like she had control over her own life. She had forgiven herself, and in doing so, she had freed herself from the chains of the past. The road to healing was not easy. There were days when the pain crept back, when the memories of betrayal felt overwhelming. But Adaise had learned to face those moments, to allow herself to feel the heart without letting it define her. She was rediscovering herself, slowly but surely. And as she looked toward the future, she realized that while the past had shaped her, it no longer held her captive. She had a whole life ahead of her, and she was determined to live it fully, with strength, grace, and a renewed sense of self worth. Adiez knew that the journey was far from over, but she was no longer afraid. She had taken the first step, and the road ahead, though uncertain, was hers to navigate. And with each step she took, she grew stronger, more resilient, and more determined to create the life she deserved. The sun began to set outside her window, casting a warm glow across the room. Adaeze smiled softly, knowing that the dark days were behind her. The future was full of possibilities, and she was ready to embrace them all.